All right. So when I was about 21 years old, I was working probably one of the most boring jobs I've ever had. It's the kind of job where you just felt exactly the same every day. It's the same building, the same people, same old routine. And because everything was so repetitive, it was actually kind of really easy to stop paying attention, which is exactly where the story starts. So one afternoon, I was helping a customer, young guy, nothing unusual, just another normal transaction, ringing out the items, just a few small ones too, nothing crazy. The total came out to something ridiculous, like $3 and like 48 cents, I want to say it was. I scanned everything, I took the payment, gave homie his receipt, and sent him on his way. Completely normal, or at least I thought it was. Well, cut 20 minutes later to my manager walking up looking angry. And I don't mean like annoyed with me, but like actually pissed off at me. So he says, Alex, come into my office. And immediately I get nervous because, as we all know, nobody ever gets called into the office for good news. Unless, of course, you're getting a promotion, but, not the kind of environment this was. The second the door closed, he asked me just one question. Do you remember that customer in the ball cap with the t shirt about 20 minutes ago that you just rang out? At first, I thought maybe I said something wrong, or maybe I didn't ring him out fast enough and he had complained. So, my manager decides to pull up the security footage. The footage shows me just completing the transaction. The customer leaves. Everything looked perfectly fine to me. All of a sudden, he decides to pause the video, zooms in, and pointed at something. There was a stack of cash I had sitting on the counter. My cash. Well, not technically mine, the company's, but from my register. Apparently, during this transaction, I had taken out several of the bills to give him change and I had set them down. The customer had seen it. He waited until I turned around and then quietly grabbed the money off the counter and just walked out. So I'm just sitting here staring at this screen because now I remembered the customer had asked me a question about the price of smokes that were right behind me before leaving. I turned around for maybe 5 seconds to double check to make sure I wasn't wrong, and that was honestly all it took. And what's crazy is the total amount wasn't even huge. It was like $8.35, but their policy was that if the drawer was off by even a dollar, management had to investigate it. So at this point, even though it's such a small amount, I was convinced I was getting fired. I mean, shoot, I'm 21, didn't have much money, and desperately needed a job, hence working there. So the next several days were pretty fucking miserable. I mean, like every manager seemed pissed around me and like super serious. Anytime I would ask, what's going on, they just kept saying the investigation is ongoing. The customer didn't return and the money was still missing, and every day I became more convinced that it was my last day there. Then, nearly a week later, something crazy happens. This guy walks into the store, walks straight to customer service, and handed over an envelope. And inside was every dollar and cent that had gone missing. Apparently, it wasn't even the customer from the video, it was his father. The father had discovered the money while cleaning out his son's car, asked where it came from. The son tried to lie, but of course, not having a very valid reason, the dad saw through it and got the truth out of him and absolutely lost his mind. According to the employee at customer service, the father practically dragged his brun son back to the store by his ear. The son was absolutely embarrassed, couldn't even look the customer service rep in the eyes. The father was pissed, and both of them just kept apologizing repeatedly. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But the company got its money back, and management decided to close the investigation. I kept that job for a few more months before ending up quitting because honestly, if they didn't want to believe me and they want to do this huge investigation over just a few dollars, then they clearly don't need someone like me on their team. In this case, it wasn't some massive screw up. It was just me getting distracted by a customer's question for 5 seconds. That 5 seconds turned into a week of thinking I was going to be filing unemployment. Ever since then, whenever I catch myself kind of rushing through stuff, I kind of start to think about that mistake I made and slow myself down a little bit because sometimes even the like smallest mistakes that you make can honestly turn into these huge anxious things. And with everything that I learned from that one, I'm definitely not going to be leaving money on a counter just sitting there ever again.